such a pleasure to be able to talk to the producer of the film Venizelos, The Struggle for Asia Minor. I hope I spelled the name of this famous politician not too bad. Thank you very much for being here to talk to us. And if you would be so kind, just to introduce yourself and maybe to start with a little approach, how the idea emerged that you work on this topic.
Hello, Roman. Thank you very much for inviting me to talk to you and for taking the film in your festival, which I have to say I'm a great supporter of a history festival in Austria or in Central Europe. I mean, I think it's a great thing that you're doing this. So congratulations and thank you once again. So yeah, I'm Leonidas Liambes. I'm the producer of the documentary, the drama documentary Venizelos, The Struggle for Asia Minor, and I've been a documentary producer for about 15 years now. Well, I started as a researcher, and I've been producing documentaries on my own for the last 3 years. But before that, I was a line producer and all the other jobs that producers do before they become producers. This is a long, I mean, personally, I've been doing political and environmental and historical documentaries since about 2008. And we'd already done in 2009 on the old company that I worked with, we did a series on population exchanges. And that included the population exchange between Greece and Turkey in 1923. But also other exchanges like the one between India and Pakistan, and also the massive movements of people after the Second World War, including, well, during and after the Second World War, including the Germans and Polish and Eastern Europe and all these things. This actually became an exhibition that we showed in Germany. Anyway, the topic of Asia Minor and the refugees was something that I've actually been involved in right since the beginning of my career in documentary filmmaking. So I was approached, in fact, this is the story of how we got into making this film. I was approached by the Venizelos Foundation in Crete, who, because of the anniversary of the Lausanne Treaty this year, they were interested in doing in making a film of some sort about Venizelos. I already had some basic knowledge of how the lay of the land, let's say. I didn't know a great deal about Venizelos himself, but I certainly knew quite a lot about the events in the First World War and the Greek-Turkish War afterwards and the population exchange that followed. So when they came to us, we were like very excited and thought it'd be great to do this. And that's how we started. I mean, I think that because the Venizelos Foundation, the National Research Foundation, Eleftherios K. Venizelos, which is run by Mr. Nikos Papadakis, who basically he started the foundation in Crete, in Chania, next to the home of Venizelos, which should actually maybe do a little introduction about him first. But let me quickly say the Venizelos Foundation supported this from the beginning, and they actually, Mr. Papadakis has actually written a book, a biography about Venizelos, and it was his idea that we should take part of the book and try and dramatize it for TV. So maybe this might be the moment, Roman, that I'm talking a little bit too much and not letting you speak, you ask questions, but I should just say a few things about Eleftherios K. Venizelos, or Venizelos, who was a Greek politician in the late 19th century, as a politician, he was in the early 20th century. He was born actually in August 1864, and he died in March 1936. And what's really interesting about him, I mean, beyond the fact that he was one of the most talented politicians, doesn't make him necessarily a nice man or successful. He was definitely one of the most talented politicians that Greece has had since independence. An interesting thing to think about, though, is that he was actually born in a subject or a citizen. Well, I don't think he was a citizen. A subject of the Ottoman Empire in Crete, in 1864, Crete was still part of the Ottoman Empire. So he was born in the Ottoman Empire, and he saw, he was part of its end, in fact, and he became the leader and the ethnarch, as we still say in Greece. Sometimes he became one of the most important leaders of the nation state of Greece that emerged from, well, some of it had already emerged from the Ottoman Empire, and the rest that emerged by the time he actually died. So it's his personal trajectory from a subject in Crete, in Chania, which is a big island in the middle of the Aegean that was still part of the Ottoman Empire, had lots of Muslims, Catholics, different. It was a multi-ethnic society. From there to being the leader of a Greek nation with a pretty small Muslim minority, and overseeing the exchange of populations between Greece and Turkey, modern state of Turkey, which they exchanged Muslims and Christians. That's a huge passage for one man to do, and actually it's a very interesting reflection of some of the big changes that took place during those years as well, not just in Greece but all over Europe.
Yeah, it's such a fascinating topic. Thank you very much, and I think it must be quite tricky, as I would say, to how to find the balance to portray such a politician, what he has done and what happened during his reign. So how was it for you to dramatize those real historical figures? What was your approach to that?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, we with the script writer Apostolos Karakasis, we sort of grabbed the original text that we were given by Mr. Papadakis, and we were trying to find a way through to try and think about the film, beginning, middle, end, a character, a protagonist, and trying to work out how to turn what was a chaotic and extremely bloody 20th decade, basically, into something that would make sense in 90 minutes, or actually we started off at 65 minutes. And so obviously we had to make you have to make a lot of decisions. A lot has to stay out in order for the story to make sense. And yeah, we had to try and make it, find a way to focus on the politician, in fact, because that's what we were deciding. The core of this film was about Venizelos and his struggle, the struggle for Asia Minor. There was an enormous amount of material that we obviously didn't cover. I mean, in the other films I did about the population exchange, there's all sorts of things that happened there that are incredibly important and the lives of millions of people. That wasn't our film. So we were talking about Venizelos and how he was involved in that. And if we start right from the beginning, I would say that Venizelos is a very good protagonist for a film. Obviously, we were making a documentary, but we were scripting it, and we wanted to have some a plot and to be interesting and to push you forward. And Eleftherios Venizelos was an ideal protagonist. I don't know whether if you ever read script writing books about what you need. Your protagonist needs to be like. He needs to make a decision and stick with it. I mean, I've seen a seminar by Bob McKee in America, and he's this American dude. He's going your protagonist is not a real person. He has to make a decision and stick with it and keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing. Well, Venizelos is a protagonist. I mean, he could be like Bruce Willis in Die Hard. He just doesn't stop. So that's actually, I mean, that's not giving the politician the statesman his due. He's a much greater figure, obviously, than someone in Die Hard. But as a protagonist in a film, he was ideal because he really has this sense of this internal drive that keeps him, that's keeping him pushing forward, and that actually lets you then unfold historical events around him, because if you have a force going in one direction, you have historical events all around it, you can actually start seeing through this conflict what actually, what was at stake, what's important, what wasn't, and so on. So yeah, in that sense, Venizelos was perfect as a protagonist. We were very happy about that. And yeah, so going on from this, from that first part, we then had to make a decision how to actually film all these events. And actually, one of the decisions that we took a little bit later on with Nikos Diandas, the director, when he came on board, because he came in after about 6 months after we'd been running the scripts, and he had this very correct idea, I think, that the film should be pretty much it should keep the dramatic conceit of staying in the time of the events were taking place. So in the past present, I'm not sure if I said that right, but anyway, we would like to be, to keep the action and everything going on in the 1920s. So even though when we first started thinking about the documentary, we're like, okay, we'll do some interviews, we'll shoot some dramatization, and we'll do some docu scenes in Crete now, and we'll go to Thessaloniki, we'll go to Smyrna, we'll go to Constantinople. Discussing this with Nikos Diandas, who was like, well, no, actually the film is then, we've got to be next to him, and let's stick with that time. Let's get our audience to think that they're actually, as much as possible, because we're going to be going to a few interviews and stuff, but let's stay in the past. So that actually changed the way we were making the film. There, we cut out all the docu scenes. There were no landscapes, no cityscapes, no anything. We just used archive, dramatization, and interviews. And the interviews are also all shot in, well, not a green screen, a grey screen, which was also a decision that fitted into Nikos's choice of, or Nikos's approach, that actually, this unity of time. So we didn't really give anyone, there's no sense of being in the present. So even though we filmed Dvor's Zevi in Tel Aviv, and a few other people in different parts of Greece, in Crete and Athens, and we could have done one in Thessaloniki, they all look like they were filmed in our studios here in Athens, which most of them were. So, and studios is perhaps a little bit of an overstatement of what they were. Anyway, a room with a screen. So that was actually a specific decision to stick with, a dramatic decision that came out from how we would approach the subject. But do you want to ask a more specific question, or?
Yeah, I think it must be quite hard. You portray this person in all these different ways, and was it for you? Was it can be a politician, a hero and anti-hero at the same time, and how to portray, to make this person, to give a balance in that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a couple of issues in terms of portraying a very important politician. I mean, I think there's no doubt that you can, Venizelos was extremely capable and charismatic, but had this protagonistic thing. But people behind the protagonist, there are bodies all over the back of the screen, so that there are always, there's a cost to all of this. Now, in terms of heroism and anti-heroism, I think that Venizelos has really got some of the most, I mean, has a very interesting internal dynamic that pushes him into something a little bit closer to a tragic hero in Greek history, in sort of ancient Greek tragedy, in a sense that he has it, like the fact that he started from Crete, the fact that he was actually a liberal, that when they went into Smyrna, which was a an Ottoman city on the coast of Asia Minor. He put in the most fair-minded, in his mind, person to oversee the running of the city, so that the minority Turkish community inside Smyrna and the minority Greek Orthodox people outside the city would be cared for properly. And there and at the same time, this was part of a massive, his investment in the Megalithea, the great idea, the expansionist Greek state. So there's this contradiction or there's this tension, at least, between this person who sort of believed in minority rights, in human rights in a sense, and then this person who was also pushing at all, in all directions, wherever it was possible, on a diplomatic, on a military, he was absolutely an unstoppable force, trying to to push out the boundaries of modern Greece. So how do you deal with that in a film, or how do you go into how do you actually show all these two sides of one man? Well, I mean, that's part of what making a documentary is to show both the side that maybe is now, or with the benefit of hindsight, something less admirable, but also to show the side that was trying to temper that other more aggressive side. I think what's interesting about his story is that really the forces of expansion and control, the forces of liberalism and autocracy, the forces of democracy and let's say tyranny, exactly, they're all kind of inside him. he really had he had a fight with he disagreed with the king, even though he'd been working with him, he was very pragmatic, he was very tried to support the constitution, but when things got too much, he was happy to take half the army and half the government and start a second government in the north of Greece. I mean, that's an extremely aggressive piece of politics. I mean, that, like, if anyone did that now, you'd be, I mean, then it was scandalous. So these contradictions are inside him, and that's, I think, I mean, as filmmakers or as historians, I think that's part of our job, is to actually just to let those contradictions come out and try and find ways in which scenes and moments and conflicts in which you can see both sides of the many sides of these politicians.
Mm-hmm. That's very well said. Yeah, that's what I thought when I had the pleasure to watch the film. It was very hard to decide how is he at this moment, and what is happening with him, as you said, with what happened between him and the king, and I don't want to spoil too much for those who have not seen the film yet, but it was really it was one side and then the other side, and you always thought, will he come back, or what will happen to him?
One of the interesting things was actually in casting him. We didn't do a massive casting call. We called like 4 or 5 well-known actors in Greece, and we did a little test shoot with them. And one other very well-known actor, he was a slightly bigger man, and he was really, it was like he had the authority. He had played like major like Agamemnon and like great kings in like ancient times, and he really, I mean, he was a great actor. He would have been great for Venizelos as well. And we chose Yorgos Dambasis, who is also he's a well-known theatre actor in Greece. But he had this, what he had for me, I mean, the difference was between like a kind of, the other guy was like a bear, and Yorgos Dambasis had this fox, like his really, like his like a extremely, not cunning is a little bit, sounds a little bit too base, I think, for Venizelos, but had a really strong sense of a real charisma and a real sense of being able to get through everything through, sort of a fox-like ability to find the right answer, to find your way through, to not let something go. And actually, the cast, I think I'm very happy with the casting, because it's not exactly like, if you see a photo of Venizelos in the from the ages, he's from the archives, it's not exactly that he looks identical, but he's a very good likeness to the type of man and type of politician that I believe that, from all the reading that Venizelos was. And I think that was, when we went to cast him, it wasn't really that important that he looked exactly like Venizelos. Unfortunately, Venizelos, if you put a decent moustache and beard and the right glasses on, you have the guy from, whoever knows anything about Venizelos, it's quite an iconic look. But we weren't, in the end, it wasn't, the most important thing was not to find someone who looked exactly like Venizelos in the from the photos. The most important thing was to find someone who had that charisma, who could project that charisma and that sense of like of a politician who really who wouldn't let anything go, and had just immense internal resources with which to overcome whatever problems that he had in front of him. It was an amazing guy. And when he retired, he was like, when he was kicked out umpteenth time from power, he went on holiday and was basically translating Thucydides into Greek, and it was a translation that was used in schools until well into the 60s or 70s. I mean, he was a multi-talented, extremely charismatic politician, and to find an actor who could portray a side of that without it seeming too little or too acting or too just, that was really the challenge. I was happy.
Yeah, it was really brilliant to look into his face, and you could really see the burden behind him, but also to make this decision. He was really very well casted. Yeah. Yeah.
He's a fun actor to work with. Really quite crazy actually, but in a good way. I mean, but really like highly strung, quite. But you needed that sense for this guy. He was he wasn't a slow kind of, don't worry guys, everything will be all right. He was constantly, I think that was my sense from the research. I mean, he was thinking, he was finding solutions. Didn't sleep. Well, not sleeping. He was really, a bundle of energy and force.
Yeah, it's really like a drama. Yeah, as you portrayed it as well. So that's very good to hear. Thank you very much, because it was so intense to follow him, and there's so much history around him, and I think Athens airport is also named after him, and you can see these also archive material in the airport, and so he's really a very present person in Greece, I think, and so and it was very interesting to see what happened to him and what happened during his time as a politician. I think we could talk for hours. This is so interesting. Maybe just a quick channel at the information at the end. I assume it was shown in Greece, the film, and how was the response from the audience?
So we showed it. We premiered last November in front of the President of the Republic, and So that's a position that I guess, well, it took a while to get there, but yeah, she's the head of state. So that was, and it went down very well. She was very happy. Well, everyone was happy, even though there was a big storm, and we filled up the theater, and there was lots. It was great. And since then, we had a couple of screenings in Crete, where that's it's playing to a home crowd. He's an even bigger hero in Crete than in the rest of Greece. And then it played on Greek TV on ERT, the Hellenic Broadcasting Corporation, and it went pretty well. We had quite a lot of downloads from their or the streaming service from them as well. And since then we had, it's been in quite a few festivals. I went to the Thessaloniki Documentary Festival, then to the San Francisco Greek Film Festival in San Francisco, where it won the Audience Award, which was really nice. And then the Los Angeles Greek Film Festival, where it also won the Audience Award, and the London Greek Film Festival, where it got an honorable mention. And it's going to be played in Australia, and Canada, and Florida, and a few other places before the end of the year. So yeah, it's fine. I mean, it's an interesting thing because obviously the subject, particularly for the diaspora Greek community, is really close to their hearts. A lot of the people who are living, a lot of the Greeks who are in America or Australia or so on, a lot of them actually have their roots in Asia Minor. They came to Greece for a bit and then they left and they went to these other countries. So when they see this topic really touches them, it's interesting as well, because even though he was in a way responsible for or could be has been accused of being responsible for the Asia Minor catastrophe, which I think the film is something that will give most people, plenty of opportunity to think about, how valid that is. Most of the actual refugees and their descendants were very pro Venizelos. He was they had pictures of him in the houses and stuff. It's a very interesting and complicated story, and very tragic as well. So yeah. And it's still live today. I mean, I think that the fact that all these people, Greeks from San Francisco and Los Angeles and Melbourne and Sydney, so many of them are there because of what happened in 1922. Otherwise, they might still be in Smyrna, or other versions of them. So yeah.
Yeah, and my very last question, it all sounds so huge. How long were you working on that project?
It wasn't actually that long. We started in August of the year before last. So it was a year. We did 8 months of script, and then went into production. Well, a bit more, properly sort of 8 months of script, and then went into production. It was just over a year and a half. Well, about less than a year and a half to do it all. It's really nice to have a working text to write, to start with something, and not just with an idea, or just with we really want to do a documentary about the decade between there and there, because it's really interesting. Which is a lot of times is what we, it's like we just have this thing that we want to do it. But if there, it was much easier because we had Mustafa Balakis's text, which really helped us, narrow things down, stick to some, make sure there was some focus in there. Otherwise, it's really hard work, particularly at the script stage.
It is, yeah. Thank you very, very much. This was so interesting, and
thank you.
I hope we will hear from your future projects as well, and we'll keep in touch. And all the best for the other festivals and for the film. I hope lots of people will see this and will be able to get in touch with this topic and what this politician made.
Thank you very much, Roman, and good luck with the festival. May many happy returns. I hope it flourishes and that you have that continues into the future. So thank you very much for inviting me on today.
Thank you. All the best. Bye.